History often remembers kings by their conquests, their crowns, and the blood spilled in their name. But the women who stood in the shadows of the thrones were cloaked not in power, but in darkness. Hurrem Sultan began her life not as a queen, but as a stolen burden, a shadow torn from her home. She was sold as a slave and imprisoned in a cage within the palace walls. But she would rise from a number to a name, from a name to a legend. This was not a love story. This was a dark tale of survival, strategy, and sacrifice. Because in the Ottoman palace, love was a weapon, and Hurrem wielded it with deadly mastery. Before we embark on a journey into the shadows of history, if you are curious about dark and forgotten stories, liking and subscribing will allow us to uncover these silent secrets of the past together. Sharing where you are listening from in the comments will connect us on this timeless journey. Her real name was forgotten, perhaps Anastasia, perhaps Alexandra Lisowska, the daughter of a Christian priest from the Polish-Lithuanian borderlands. Her childhood ended with fire and screams. Crimean Tatar raiders descended upon her village like vultures. She was torn from her family, dragged to slave markets. She was young, perhaps no older than 10, but her value was not just in her labor, but in her face, her bright red hair, and her sharp gaze. This is why she was taken to Constantinople, not to a home, but to an empire. In the palace, she was sold to the Sultan's mother's household and given a new name, Hurrem, the cheerful one. A cruel irony. Cheerfulness would become her armor. She entered the Ottoman harem, the forbidden space, not just a palace wing, but a machine designed to produce heirs, control women, and keep the royal bloodline politically untainted. The Sultan could not marry a noblewoman. He had to be above all blood ties. This is why he united with slaves. Hurrem was one of hundreds of slave women behind the golden doors. On the outside, it looked like paradise, blue and green tiles, silk cushions, fountains, sweet perfumes, music. But the reality beneath was ice cold, control, surveillance, silence. Here, a girl was trained not for freedom, but for obedience. She learned music, poetry, dance, embroidery, calligraphy, and the languages of seduction. Every movement, every glance mattered. Even her walk was corrected. The harem was built on dominance, not desire. It was the dark face of politics dressed in perfume and silk. Every woman inside was both a prisoner and a potential queen. The Sultan's mother, Hafsa Sultan, managed the rotation of the bedmates, not the Sultan himself. When the time came to choose a concubine for her son, she chose Hurrem. This was not an invitation from a fairy tale. This was a ritual. Hurrem was washed, oiled, dyed with henna, and had all body hair removed with an arsenic paste and a sharp shell. She was adorned with jewelry and silks. Accompanied by music, she crawled on her knees to the Sultan's bed. Suleiman, magnificent, newly crowned, and still mourning his father's death, summoned her. And while most concubines entertained him for one night, Hurrem was summoned repeatedly. Hurrem was not just beautiful. She was intelligent, witty, cheerful, not humble, but magnetic. She knew poetry. She could speak with the Sultan not just as a concubine, but as a friend. But this rise earned her enemies. The biggest was Mahidevran, the Sultan's former favorite and the mother of his eldest son, Mustafa. Mahidevran saw her status slipping and one day attacked Hurrem's face, scratching it. When the Sultan called for Hurrem, she refused. She called herself a soiled piece of meat. It was a devastating move. Instead of pushing Suleiman away, it drew his interest. She told him what Mahidevran had done, and in that moment, she won the Sultan's heart and trust. Hurrem didn't just survive in the palace. She learned to bend its rules. She knew when to resist, when to evoke sympathy, and how to speak without pleading. This was her genius. Soon after, she gave birth to a son, Sait Sadmehmed. This changed everything. In the Ottoman system, a mother could only have one son. The logic was brutal. But now Hurrem had an heir. The Sultan's future was now in her hands. After that, she gave birth to 4 more sons and a daughter. This was unprecedented. Hurrem was not just a lover. but a fixed power that the empire had never witnessed. Whispers spread through the palace. Rumors that she was practicing sorcery, that she had poisoned Mahidevran, that she had bewitched the Sultan. The Sultan tried other red-haired slaves, but Hurrem sent them back. He gave her all the other concubines. He wrote poems to her. He called her my moonlight, my spring, my only joy, my throne and my lonely niche, my wealth, my love, my most sincere friend, my confidant, my very being, my Sultan, my one true love. Hurrem Sultan had achieved the impossible. She had made a sultan a prisoner of her heart. But in the palace, love was never just love. It was a chain, a game, a mortal danger. A dagger was hidden in every silk curtain, in every silver touch, and Hurrem had risen too high, too fast, in a palace woven with jealousy, blood ties, and betrayal. A dark path lay ahead of her, where her loyalty, motherhood, and morality would be tested. Because in the Ottoman palace, power always demanded a price. When a woman rises in a man's world, they call her manipulative. When she gains power among palace slaves, they call her a witch. And when she defies centuries of royal tradition, she is called dangerous. Hurrem Sultan had climbed to an unthinkable point. She was not just the Sultan's favorite, not just the mother of princes. She was a presence the empire had never witnessed before, a woman who would not be left behind. But power in the Ottoman palace did not come without blood. Hurrem knew this. If she didn't make the first move, someone else surely would. After spending 14 years in the palace, Hurrem Sultan did the unthinkable. She married the Sultan. She broke the chains of slavery and, defying laws and tradition, became his legal wife. For centuries, no sultan had taken a concubine as a wife. Hurrem was crowned as Seki Sultan. With her daily wealth, she moved into the highest apartments of the palace, places forbidden to women since the time of Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror. The court was stunned into silence. The world watched in awe. A Christian slave girl taken from Ruthenia was now the most powerful woman in the empire. Some called it madness, some called it black magic. To our eyes, it was a romantic victory, a love story won against tradition. But to the Ottoman elite, it was a perversion. The palace was not just standing against a woman gaining power. It was resisting the idea that a slave could rewrite the rules. Hurrem didn't just enjoy power. She used it masterfully. She became a patron of the public, spending her fortune to build mosques, schools, fountains, and a women's hospital next to the slave market. Most didn't notice, but no one could deny it. She financed soup kitchens that fed thousands, strengthened diplomatic ties between the Ottomans and her homeland of Poland. Silently, she reshaped the role of women in society. Hurrem was not the first woman to suffer in the harem, but she may have been the first to turn it into a throne. Even when Suleiman was at war in Hungary, Belgrade, and Vienna, he continued to write letters to her. The letters were filled with longing and tenderness. Even if the seas were ink and the trees were pens, they could not write the pain of this separation, one said. But the letters were not just romantic, they were political. Hurrem informed Suleiman of the threats to his children, especially those trying to protect Mustafa. Prince Mustafa, Suleiman's eldest son by Mahidevran, was loved by the army and the people. He was tall, brave, and noble, with the look of sultan. But he was a threat to Hurrem. In the Ottoman system, the transfer of the throne was by equal right, and only one could live. The others would be strangled to death. And Hurrem made her move. Her first target was Pargali Ibrahim Pasha, the Sultan's closest advisor and companion in arms. Ibrahim was once a slave like Hurrem, but now he had become arrogant, wealthy, and dangerously loyal to Mustafa. Hurrem whispered doubts into Suleiman's ear: corruption, bribery, treason. When night fell, Suleiman invited his old friend to dinner. They talked, they laughed, they shared memories. When Ibrahim fell asleep, Suleiman gave the order. He was strangled to death with a silk cord. The execution of princes, no blood was spilled. The next morning, the palace was in shock. Ibrahim was gone, and Hurrem was still standing. She had eliminated a man who had once helped shape the empire. Not with poison, not with rebellion, but with whispers. Hurrem knew what she had learned in the Ottoman palace. Silence was louder than screams. Yet Mustafa lived and grew stronger. As her own sons grew up, the danger also increased. Her eldest son, Mehmed, died of smallpox at the age of 21. Hurrem was devastated not only by grief, but by fear. Her chances had dwindled. She married her daughter Muraima to the new Grand Vizier, Rustam Pasha, a man loyal only to her. Together, they began to spread rumors in the palace. Was Mustafa planning a coup? Suleiman hesitated. He loved his son, but a seed of doubt, once planted, grew quickly. The final act came. Hearing the allegations, Mustafa went to his father's camp. He entered the tent, bowed, but before he could speak, the guards seized him and strangled him in front of his father's eyes. Suleiman watched in silence. Mustafa was dead. Hurrem's bloodline was now unrivaled. But the price was heavy. Her youngest son, Sahanger, born with a spinal deformity, died shortly after Mustafa. Only Selim and Bayezid remained. 2 sons, 1 throne, and when the day came, one had to kill the other. Perhaps it was a mercy that Hurrem never sought. Hurrem fell ill in her 50s. The man who had conquered the world, who had ruled against all odds, Suleiman, remained by her bedside, silent in the shadows, beside her despite the palace whispers. In the ominous silence of 1558, the empire held its breath with the death of Hurrem Sultan. The palace had bid farewell to its most powerful woman. Suleiman had lost the only companion who stood by him. His mourning, which would last 8 years, was turning into a melting into the shadows. Silk robes were replaced with linen, golden plates with earthenware. The palace's magnificence had become a pale shadow in the darkness of morning. In death, he wanted to be buried beside her, not as an emperor and concubine, but as a man and his wife. Hurrem Sultan ended her life with a crown never thought worthy of a concubine. But even death could not silence her story. In the Ottoman dynasty, power did not pass softly from mother to son. It came with blood and shadow. Hurrem had fought to secure a future for her children, and she had succeeded. But now, only one truth remained. If one of her sons wanted to live, the other had to die. In the dark shadow of the throne, the children of the woman once called a witch waited silently to complete her deadly game. And this time it was not love poems but blood that would speak. After Hurrem's death, the palace would darken, and Suleiman, the Magnificent, would become silent. The man of gold, the sultan who conquered the world, now ate from earthenware, prayed, and was silent. The woman who had lit up his world with fire and fury was gone. With her, the last balance between her sons had also vanished. 2 sons remained, Selim, a hedonist known for his wine and laughter, and Bayezid, a character as solid as a rock, stern and quick to anger, yet charismatic. Hurrem had loved them both, but she knew, and now they knew, that only one would be crowned. Hurrem played her game with intelligence, but the final card was not hers. The ancient hierarchy of the Ottomans did not forgive voids. Bayezid looked at his brother with hatred, seeing Selim as weak, hedonistic, and lazy. Selim loved pleasure, not politics. But what Selim had was a power Bayezid did not understand. Loyal allies, Hurrem's old confidant Rustam Pasha, and his father's love. When the conflict flared, Bayezid rebelled. He fled with his sons to the Persian border, hoping to establish a new base of support. But Suleiman saw treason. The order was given instantly. The betrayal was complete. Bayezid was hunted down. His 5 sons were strangled beside him. There was no mercy, no escape. The bloodline that Hurrem had fought to protect was limited to a single thread that survived as Selim II. In 1566, Suleiman died on the battlefield. He was still mourning his wife, living his life like a cursed shadow, remembering what power had cost him. He was buried beside Hurrem, in a marble tomb at the Suleimani Mosque, the empire's greatest jewel of stone. His son Selim, too, took the throne, but his father's spirit was not in him. The nickname, Selim the Drunkard, symbolized as turning to wine more than war, to comfort more than conquest. The empire that had once expanded with an iron rule began to soften slowly. Yet Selim's reign, though forgettable, had opened the door Hurrem had pried open, women gaining power in the Ottoman Empire. Hurrem was remembered as dangerous because she had not only gained power, she had shown that a woman could win, and the empire would never be the same again. After Hurrem's death, a new reign began behind the curtains. Historians now call it the Sultanate of Women. For nearly a century, the wives, mothers, and daughters of sultans wielded immense power behind the scenes, consulting with ministers, issuing orders, and contributing to the declaration of war. None of this would have been possible without Hurrem. Hurrem began as a stolen girl sold for silver. She endured beatings, jealousy, and isolation. She clawed her way up in a male-dominated system designed to completely forget women. And yet, she was remembered. Was Hurrem a manipulator? Yes. But did she have another choice? Her survival depended on her sons being crowned and her rivals dying before her. Morality could not be a luxury. Hurrem lived by the rules of the harem until she rewrote them. On a throne drawn with death and intrigue, she killed with her decisions, her victories surrounded by funerals. Her ambition was equal to her devotion. We like to imagine that love can reign in the palace. But in the Ottoman palace, love was a weapon. Hurrem was both the knife and the hand that held it. Today, you can still visit her tomb. It is beside her husband's, just as she always dreamed, elegantly adorned, decorated with poems and Quranic verses. There is no whisper of scandal or seduction. It tells the story of a woman who conquered the unconquerable, not with an army, but with her mind, determination, and unshakable ambition. And her name still causes debate. Some see her as evil, some as a hero, some as a witch, some as a saint. But in the end, she was more dangerous than all of them. She was a woman who survived and refused to be erased. Hurrem Sultan's story reminds us that power is rarely given. It is taken, it is carved, it is earned with sacrifice.